Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Sir Hunt on X on this 16th of December of the calendar year 2025. As I come to you live from Cincinnati, Ohio, in the United States of America. Here's hoping everyone had themselves a wonderful day today. Warmer weather over here in Cincinnati. Tonight is a legendary night topic. It's one topic and one topic only. Tonight was supposed to be something else, but I had a change of fortune because of an historic event that took place 59 years ago tonight over at Madison Square Garden. And this was brought up because we're talking about career of individuals who like to dig deep and persevere. The winner of this fight exemplified perseverance like none other. It was the first of two encounters between the light heavyweight champion Jose Torres and the former two-time world middleweight champion Dick Tiger. And in this particular fight, it was pegged to be a Jose Torres showcase, but Dick Tiger had plenty of other ideas going into this fight because the Jose Torres was about to become the it thing of the light heavyweight division, and he was about to march his rights to stardom. We talk about Jose Torres. Let's start with Torres here real quick. Born in Ponce, Puerto Rico, eventually moved over to New York, which is common for the Puerto Rican crowd. Puerto Rican citizens, most of them go to New York because we know New York is Puerto Rican dominant. It was, of course, back then we talk about the 1960s. Born and moved to New York, where he pursued his career. Fighter the peekaboo style, because he was, of course, trained under the great Cus D'Amato. You know him from this tutelage with Floyd Patterson and Mike Tyson. Before Tyson, he had both Floyd Patterson and, in this case, Jose Torres. And known for his skills, footwork, solid defense, and basically known for a vicious body attack, where the late Burt Sugar, one of the premier boxing walking Bibles, basically said one of the premier body punchers in boxing history, and that's what Jose Torres was. And you talk about one of the more stellar amateur careers, representing the United States at the Melbourne Games in 1956, where he lost to the standout named Lazo Pap, in basically a fight to basically one of the premier amateur fighters, but he did take home the silver medal and did manage to pursue a later amateur career where he was a national AAU middleweight and New York middleweight champions in 1958 for both amateur distinctions. He turned professional real early, went unbeaten in his first 27 fights, 26-0-1, before an unexpected loss to a fighter named Florentino Fernandez. And there were questions about what he was going to do at that point. He did manage to win 8 straight fights after the loss, which included a 2-round obliteration of Carl Bobo Olsen, known for the 4-fight series with Sugar Ray Robinson, gave him everything he can handle. But Torres was laid to waste to Olsen in less than 2 rounds to set himself up for a title shot against the then light heavyweight champion, Willie Pastrano. And when you talk about what took place in that fight with Pastrano, basically he put a clinic on how to deliver body punches because he pounded he pounded Willie Pastrano into submission and got a technical knockout win. And we talk about him rising to the top. He managed to have a couple successful title defenses against guys like Chick Charlwood and Eddie Cotton to set up this particular fight. And this was supposed to be the name on his resume because this is what he needed to try and get to the next level. And we talk about the great Jose Torres. And of course, he had a lot of ventures outside of his career after it was done. I will touch on those at the end. Now to the opponent of this night, Dick Tiger. He was born as Richard Ietu out of the country of Nigeria. At a time when it was war-torn, he was a lieutenant in the Biafran army during the Nigerian Civil War back there, where he taught people hand-to-hand combat, and he taught people a lot over there. We talk about his stature in the Nigerian community, and we talk about this particular night, what took place here. He, after the war that took place, he decided to pursue his own boxing career, moved to Liverpool, England, of all places, to pursue it. And like we talk about the style of Torres, the polar opposite was what Dick Tiger was. A relentless fighter, chiseled out of stone, basically undersized for that weight classes when you think about it, because he was real short but strong. He was a come forward fighter, but very methodical, very durable, a very all around fighter who could fight with punch well with both hands, especially to the body if he got inside you. And one of those rare cases where a fighter in a 15-round fight that got better as the fight was going on and it got stronger. And that's what happened. We talk about Dick Tiger in this particular fight. And he got a title shot during his run as a middleweight against the all-time great Gene Fullmer. And that fight was the epitome of who Dick Tiger was. Started slow, but came on strong as the rounds progressed. And basically showed the world why he was the premier middleweight at that time, when he wore down the outstanding Gene Fullmer to win a unanimous decision. And at that particular fight, after he won the title the first time, Ring Magazine nominated him the 1962 Fighter of the Year. And we talk about his 3-fight series with Gene Fullmer, going 2-0-1 against Fullmer, which basically was his landmark series at the time. He would go 2-0-1 against Fullmer, but eventually, after that series, he would lose the title subsequently to the standout Joey Girardello in odd circumstances. I'll just leave it at that. But to show you the perseverance of what Dick Tiger was, he would come back less than a year later and regain the title from Girardello on a unanimous decision. And after regaining the title, Ring Magazine named him the 1965 Fighter of the Year. And it looked like things are going on the right track. But his next fight, he would lose the title to the standout Emil Griffith in a fight where he looked like it was the end for him, because he looked old. It looked older than old for the most part, when you consider he had a bit of a late start due to his, military background in Nigeria. And basically, it looked like it was the end for Dick Tiger. But he moves up and makes this challenge to the standout Jose Torres for the light heavyweight championship. And we talk about going into this fight. Before I proceed to this fight, I could talk about the pre-fight and how to compare it to today. It was a 3-1 odds in Dick Tiger's favor. Let me remind everybody, this is back in 1966. You're a 3-1 underdog. You're basically viewed as someone who had no shot. I mean, basically, you weren't going to win. I mean, that's how this was for Dick Tiger in his light heavyweight debut, challenging the standout Jose Torres. Everybody thought Torres was going to dominate and just have his way with a washed up version of Dick Tiger, who was basically, I believe, past it at age 37 going into this fight. Let me remind you, in those weight classes, you're 37 and you're a 3-1 underdog. They're basically telling you, hang it up. That's what they were doing to Dick Tiger before this fight. And Jose Torres, under the Custody Amato regime, was supposed to be the it thing coming up in the light heavyweight ranks. But it said, Dick Tiger at Madison Square Garden on this night had other ideas. And we talk about Jose Torres under Custody Amato. And the Custody Amato style. Did it with Patterson and Tyson. Fought out of the peekaboo stance. That's what his motto was going to be coming into this fight, because you knew that the standout Dick Tiger was going to be coming relentlessly, granted methodically, but also relentlessly. And that's how this fight was about to begin. All kinds of questions. Really, the biggest one is, can Dick Tiger hang with Jose Torres after what happened in his loss to Emil Griffith? Because he looked old, and they were all basically saying, you better hang it up. Mind you, it's 1966. You're a 3-1 underdog. You're basically 37 years old, had a lot of tough fights. We talk about the 3 Dick Tiger had with Gene Fullmer and 2 with Joey Girardello, among many others. And little did we know that Dick Tiger had more in the tank than we thought. And going into this fight, as we begin the fight here, little did we know that Dick Tiger was ready and basically salvaged himself for one of his last great efforts. You talk about the early rounds of this fight, it's a case of boxer versus, I always say called Dick Tiger puncher, because he never had the lethal punch that some of the other middleweights had, but certainly heavy-handed. And Jose Torres, for the most part, tried to use his reach, his speed, his skills, his height, and his reach to try to keep Dick Tiger at bay. As he was, trying to keep him at bay, the problem was he wasn't landing much on Tiger at all because he was probably a little out of range. And the ones he did land, he barely even did any kind of damage to Dick Tiger because of Dick Tiger's hard hit, which are arguably one of the hardest hits in boxing history south of the heavyweight division. That's what Dick Tiger was. And it looked like Torres controlled the fight, especially the first round and a half, where it was a feeling out round process, which you know how that goes in the sport for the fight followers out here. But as the fight was started to wear on the early rounds, it looked like Torres started to fight himself a little bit, started to land a little bit more, kept Tiger at bay, not allowed Dick Tiger to get inside. Could basically won for the most part for the first 5 rounds at the very least. You probably say another one was thrown in there that could have gone either way, but probably for the first 5 rounds, you could have given to Jose Torres because he used his speed, used his ring generalship, the peekaboo style to not allow himself to get hit by Tiger, and he controlled the fight early. But in typical Dick Tiger fashion, which is what he did against Gene Fullmer in the first fight, did it here. Gradually come along, started to put the pressure on Jose Torres, and the relentless body attack that he's known for that wore down Gene Fullmer and Joey Giardillo. Did it here also, slowly but gradually. And as he was coming on, you started to see Jose Torres start to tire a little bit because of what he had expended the first few rounds. Remember, he was also missing a lot of punches, which takes a lot out of a fighter. And then he did a lot of that. But as Torres was missing punches and Tiger was finding his way inside of Torres, he started to work his body and he started to wear Torres down. And he started to have control of the fight. And about the 6th or 7th round, as it actually started to stall a little bit, it started to have a bit of it bounced out almost even to that point. But in round 8, maybe the moment that said a lot, at least at that point, you thought, was when Jose Torres started to come along, put together the big right hand that had Tiger on the defensive, and appeared Tiger was hurt for the first time in this fight. But Torres took his foot off the gas, and because of it, he let Tiger off the hook. And because he let Tiger off the hook, Dick Tiger would come back and reestablish himself inside that long reach, and the combinations inside the body work that Dick Tiger was known for started to show it again. And at that point, it was basically anybody's fight because it's basically a toss-up going to the final rounds. So we talk about the last 6 rounds of this fight. As this fight was starting to go on, both fighters started to buckle down, but it was a case of Tiger's strength starting to show, as even though Jose Torres had his moments, and he had a lot of them in those late rounds, he couldn't keep Tiger off of him. And in the last few rounds, Tiger started to hurt Torres and started to control the fight. It basically came on almost like declared as a tidal wave at that point. Because at one point, especially in the early rounds, we consider how Torres took control of the Tiger fight, and Tiger just coming on out of nowhere. He came on out of nowhere and just made it as if what Torres did was nothing. And that's what basically happened, especially in the last 5 or 6 rounds when they started to mix it up. Tiger was starting to win the exchanges. That's what we had down the stretch of this particular light heavyweight championship. And a crowd that was pro Torres, who basically was a hometown fighter out of New York, now started becoming pro Tiger, cheering him on as his will, his grit, and his determination started to take over this fight. And as the rounds was coming on, he became even more aggressive. And Torres had no answers for Tiger. And at this point, Torres was basically on the defensive, and Tiger was starting to pour it on. And basically, you had the end of the last 6 rounds of this fight where it was all Dick Tiger. And even though Jose Torres was trying to win, he just couldn't because Tiger was starting to land the heavier punches. The body attack was starting to show. And in the conclusion of the 15 rounds, and in a shocker, we're basically as a 3-1 underdog at age 37, where he was written off, Dick Tiger rises to the mountaintop once again to win an undisputed championship, this time in the light heavyweight division, when he beat the tough, standout, and durable, and well-skilled Jose Torres on a unanimous decision. And Dick Tiger, like he showed against Gene Fullmer, like he showed against Joey Giardillo, found a way to get back to the top against all odds, where basically everybody was writing him off. Remember, this is 1966. You're a 3-1 underdog at age 37. They're calling for you to basically hang it up or you're getting hurt. Dick Tiger had other ideas, and he showed it here as he would win the unanimous decision to become a world undisputed champion for a third time in a second weight class. Once again, for you fight followers who clamor about belts, this is when undisputed championships had real meaning to it, not the ones that guy who just retired a few minutes ago, the real undisputed championships that had meaning. And Dick Tiger did it 3 times in 2 weight classes and ascended himself to one of the better fighters of the 60s and the all-time great and the top 100 all-time. I'll touch on his status here in a second. But this fight essentially prompted a rematch between the two of them somewhere down the line, I think like a year later. And this time, Torres did all basically essentially the same way the first fight was, except this time Torres did a much better job of keeping Tiger at bay. And this time, the first fight where Tiger was a clear winner, the second fight had all kinds of chaos because Tiger was a clear split decision winner. But a fight where Torres looked like he controlled most of the fight, and basically, in a fight where I saw the footage, I thought it could have gone either way, but it prompted a New York riot so bad to where the governing body said, for a while, we're not going to sanction any fight at Madison Square Garden. That was how the rematch was. But back to Tiger-Torres 1. And a lot of history was made. We talk about this because nobody saw this one coming. I mean, Jose Torres, he wasn't a phenom like some of the other cuss projects like we talk about with Patterson and Tyson. But he's slowly becoming one of the it guys. Remember, he was an undisputed champion, which stood for something. At that time, it was a 2-belt era, and you had either both belts or no belts. And Torres had both belts after he obliterated Willie Pastrana. And many thought he was going to do the same to Dick Tiger, especially after how Tiger looked against Emil Griffith, where he looked like a lost cause. That didn't happen. Or Dick Tiger ascended himself in history because multiple division titles back then, if he was a multiple division undisputed champion, like he was back in the 60s, when it really meant something, and I'm not talking about the one who just retired, the one that really meant something, it really meant something. 3 times in 2 weight classes. And we talk about Dick Tiger, you talk about the grit, the determination, the resilience. Dick Tiger was probably that story you hear all the time of the little engine that could. Because he wasn't expected to do much in his career, but carved up a pretty solid career for the most part. And the former fight probably hit him at his apex, put him in the stature of his place in history. But what he did 59 years ago at Madison Square Garden to Jose Torres to shock the world as a 3-1 underdog at age 37 probably put him at a higher stature because, Torres was the it thing. Tiger had other ideas and showed it. And that's why he was able to persevere to get to the top once again, beating the standout Jose Torres by unanimous decision. And we talk about these two fighters after this fight. First, I'm going to break down a little bit of Jose Torres, really an intriguing story in and out of the ring. We're going to start with him in the ring first. He was a fighter who fought on the peekaboo stance, lost his fight because he got outworked. Managed to get the rematch with Tiger, but many thought he should have gotten the nod. We prompted a riot after the fight. But after those 2 Tiger fights, he would fight 2 more times, and then basically retire for good. He got 2 wins and just hung it up. Was a centerpiece of the part of the New York State Athletic Commission in the mid-'80s from 84 to 88, a part of that team with Randy Gordon and a lot of the crew. And the New York State Athletic Commission was the premier commission at that time. This is before Nevada became big. New York was the premier commission. We talk about Jose Torres and Randy Gordon. And that's what Jose Torres was a part of from 84 to 88 after his boxing career was over. President of one of the governing bodies, I don't want to mention them, but was the president of one of those for a 5-year period, gave it some credibility, especially when it came up from 1990 to 1995 when he was there. But a co-author for 2 marquee books, when you think about this. First one, he was a co-author for the book called Sting Like a Bee, a biography of the career of Muhammad Ali. Back in 1971, the story about that one. And of course, in 89, Fire and Fear, the inside story of Mike Tyson. the biography of Tyson in '89. Of course, we know the story of Tyson all along, but Jose Torres sort of shared the same distinction with the Tyson because they had almost similar backgrounds, and we consider they both came from the custody model regimen. He wrote a great tell-all book about Tyson. It was really spot on, and was a terrific author also with those two particular books. And eventually wound up being in the International Boxing Hall of Fame in 1997. That's made for his work in the ring. Very, very good fighter, but I don't know about his stature all time. But for his work outside of it, we talk about representing the governing bodies, working as a commissioner. He certainly belonged to the Hall of Fame. A great boxing mind himself during his time in the fight game, and was one of the brilliant minds and had a great big picture view of a lot of things. When you heard his interviews and hear him talking about certain things and certain fighters, he knew how to articulate words and had a great story for any fighter and any trainer he was around. And that's what made Jose Torres a prominent and premier figure in the fight game. And eventually, after the time in New York, he eventually wound up returning home to Puerto Rico to spend the rest of his life over there till he passed away due to sickness in 2009. God rest his soul. When we talk about Jose Torres, one of the premier historians out of the ring, a great fighter inside of it, but a massive contributor outside of it. And some of the things that goes today in today's game, fight game, we talk about how the organizations are run and how some of the fighters have come up. Jose Torres was a pioneer in that regard, and he set a heck of a blaze. Ask Mike Tyson about Jose Torres. He can tell you all about him because, as I said, Torres and Tyson had almost similar backgrounds in the custody of Motto training gym in New York, upscale New York. And Tyson knows a lot about Torres as much as Torres knows about Tyson. Want to know about Jose Torres? Go ask Mike Tyson. He'll tell you all about it. That's Jose Torres. Now to the best story of them all. We talk about underdog stories of all time. Maybe for that time at least, Dick Tiger was certainly an underdog story when we think about it. It's hardly anyone gave him a chance. You're talking about a working man's man, started boxing late, working out difficult conditions. Remember, he lived in Nigeria at a war-torn culture time. As he moved to Liverpool to pursue the career, started late, basically found a way to escape poverty, which was how he was raised, became a standout. Eventually, we talk about the 3 world titles in 2 weight classes. Remind you, 2 of the fights against Fulmer and Torres, he was paying not to have a chance, especially Torres when he was washed up. Now, some people are going to say he lucked out against Fulmer because Fulmer was at the end. Okay, understandably so. But mind you, the Tiger was no spring chicken going into those particular fights. He was in his early 30s. And back in those days, you're in your early 30s. People are asking how much do you have left in the game. It's not like today where people can find a way to string out their 30s. Back then, because of how active a fighter like Dick Tiger was, you're in your 30s. People are wondering how much game you have left. And that certainly was what Dick Tiger was. It's going to fight with Gene Fulmer, the 3 fights. And, of course, the 2 fights eventually with Joey Giardello, where he split that series, losing the middleweight title, then regaining it in 65, where he became the fighter of the year. 3-time fighter of the year, twice by Ring Magazine in 1962 and 1965. Once in 1966 by the Boxing Writers Association of America, which is after the Torres win, when nobody thought he could do it. And you said he gave the immediate rematch to Jose Torres, which was an honorable thing. You know, as I said, a better fight, better performance by Torres. Decisions all over the place. People ask who really won the fight. Take your pick. I thought it was a close fight, but it led to a nasty fight in New York City, the same spot, which we know in New York, it's basically how Jose Torres was loved over there, and it's basically a pro-Torres crowd. So that's how that took place. But he did retain the title, did make another title defense before losing it to the standout Bob Foster. A fight where he was basically the end. I mean, he wasn't going to beat Bob Foster because Bob Foster was an opposing figure. I said Bob Foster was like the Tommy Hearns of light heavyweights back then, 6'2", with a perfect left hook. And that's how he pasted Dick Tiger and knocked him out cold to win the title from Tiger. And eventually lost an eventual rematch to the late Emil Griffith, which basically was the end for him. And he basically retired after that fight, had battle with liver cancer before he passed shortly thereafter. But we talk about this guy's legacy. I mean, not talked about enough, and it should be, because we talk about that locomotive that could. Dick Tiger was a locomotive that could. I mean, he was a short guy who had a chip on his shoulder, almost like what Archie Moore had during that time. Similar thing, similar ways. Just keep going at it. And we talk about his unwavering spirit, managed to connect every single which way possible with the Nigerian community. That tells you about what Dick Tiger's legacy was. And some people call his victory over Gene Fulmer in their first fight the most significant moment in Nigerian combat sports history. That's saying a whole lot. And we talk about how great Gene Fulmer was. Tiger outworked him to death. That's how he beat him the first time. And we talk about what he did, his career accolades. Of course, 1991, inducted to the Boxing Hall of Fame. Remind you, the Boxing Hall of Fame didn't start till 1990. That's why some of those guys wound up later than you would think. Voted one of the best of the 60s. And there's a book called The Best of the 20th Century. His name was on it. And the best in 2002, Ring Magazine had the best of the past 80 years. He was ranked 31st. That should tell you what Dick Tiger was. And another publication had him as a top 50 all-time underrated fighter of all time, because we talk about some of the guys in those weight classes, he's not talked about enough. I mean, he's not going to get the stature at light heavyweight because he did beat Torres, but only had one title defense and then lost to Bob Foster. But his tenure as middleweight, probably say he belongs to the top 10, maybe the top 15, possibly the top 10, because of everything he did in that ring, the back end of that decade. Remember, he was undisputed at a time when if you wore two belts, they didn't split those two belts. You had the two belts at the same time simultaneously as undisputed, and that's what made Dick Tiger a standout. 3 times undisputed in 2 weight classes when it really, really meant something, because when you had that name undisputed attached to you in those days, you were the king of the world. And Dick Tiger was king of the world on 3 separate occasions. And he was just that little engine that could. And we talk about fighters who emulated, that's a similar style like that. Not just, coming forward, but doing it methodically, doing it gradually, and wearing you out as fights went on. There are some other fighters you could probably say afterward that had that same resemblance. Notably, like a guy like a Marvin Hagler or a Julio Cesar Chavez, Pernell Whitaker, just to name a few of them. But Dick Tiger was certainly that little engine that could. And when he was in that ring, he was a load. Any historian could tell you what he was all about. And if Jose Torres was around, he'd tell you a lot about Dick Tiger, because Dick Tiger was as good as anyone during that time. And we talk about the former win. Maybe you could probably say the former win was sort of the coming out party, especially that trilogy. Got a little redemption after losing the title to Giardello. But maybe what put him in history was what took place 59 years ago tonight at Madison Square Garden against a young upstart named Jose Torres under the Casti-Amato regime in New York. And as a 3-1 underdog at age 37, when everybody wrote off Dick Tiger in this fight and was thinking Jose Torres was going to just basically handle him, Dick Tiger rose to the occasion against all odds, persevered, pursued, and managed to win the unanimous decision in the backyard of Jose Torres to become the undisputed light heavyweight champion. The 3rd time he went undisputed in 2 weight classes. The little engine that could, which is a standout phenom, and Dick Tiger hit the pedestal for the 3rd time. It's stories like this that what made the sport what it was for the longest time. I mean, you have your glitz and glamour guys, you can have your, cash cow guys, whatever. But when you tell a story about a guy like Dick Tiger, who went through a lot, especially we talk about his early life in Nigeria with how it was war-torn at that time, to get out, start late, and manage to have a great career when you get older, not quite to the level Archie Moore had, but similar. That's one of those stories that will forever be told at the highest level, and that's what Dick Tiger was at the end of the day. Certainly a standout. And Jose Torres was a pretty darn good light heavyweight also. I mean, never got to that level that he should have, maybe, but still managed to win the undisputed title from a standout named Willie Pastrano. Had a couple of nice title defenses before the loss to Tiger, but that was it for him, because he did, after the Tiger fights, he fought twice more, smartly got out. You probably say he got out at the right time, because probably the end was going to be near for him. We consider some of the other guys in that light heavyweight division were about to take over, most notably Bob Foster. He got out at the right time. Dick Tiger just kept pursuing, but just that little engine that could. And you probably say for Dick Tiger as a middleweight, maybe a top 15. Some say top 10. I don't have a problem with it. Bottom half. Top guys ahead of him are the who's who. Can't put him over them guys. But certainly had a great run. The chip on your shoulder type fighter who kept pursuing. It was just fighting for the sake of fighting. Wasn't interested in fame. Wasn't interested in, all the cameras or glitz and glamour, but was fighting just for the sake of fighting. And as he was fighting for the sake of fighting, managed to pick up 3 world titles. That's what it should be about at the end of the day. And we have a guy like that. And Dick Tiger, one of the great underdog stories when you think about it. It's something you live to tell about. And when you read about a guy like him, now with everything out in the open, and I encourage you to read everything you can about the great Dick Tiger, it's real fascinating. I mean, a lot of parallels with some others. We talk about being in Nigeria, part of a war-torn country, sort of like what Alexis Arguello went through in his country of Nigeria when he moved to Miami. Similar thing, Dick Tiger went to Liverpool and pursued his career. Got a late start, just like Arguello did. Both fighters managed to win multiple world titles, both Hall of Famers. Both took a harder road and managed to pursue and managed to be great. And Dick Tiger maybe had the biggest win of his hard-earned career 59 years ago tonight at Madison Square Garden at a packed house as a 3-1 underdog at age 37, upsetting Jose Torres to win the undisputed light heavyweight championship. And I remind you again, this was 1966 we're talking about. You're a 3-1 underdog at age 37 and had the miles Dick Tiger had because he had a lot of rough fights. But you talk about the 3 with Gene Fullmer and against guys like Giardello and the loss to Emil Griffith. You're a 3-1 underdog at age 37 against a young upstart like Jose Torres with all those miles. They're basically telling you to retire. And that's what many thought was going to happen to Dick Tiger because few, if any, gave Tiger a chance to do anything in this fight. But in typical Dick Tiger fashion, just casually pursued relentlessly, methodically, gradually broke down Torres with the body punching, got stronger as the fight went on, and had his hand raised at the end of the day. I encourage everyone, if you have 5 minutes to spare and want an interesting story to read it on Dick Tiger, a.k.a. Richard Yehu, which is what his real name was. A fascinating story in and out of the ring. Same with Jose Torres, because Torres was a massive contributor to the sport for the longest time from the mid-'80s to the mid-'90s. Wrote a couple books in there, had some documentaries, told some great stories. I encourage anyone who's interested in just spending 5 minutes of time, read about these 2 guys because they're absolutely intriguing and interesting. Especially Tiger, who was the proverbial little engine that could, because he did everything against all odds, managed to have an all-time great career. The accolades speak for itself. I could have about 20 shows about Dick Tiger if I wanted to. He's one of my favorite fighters to talk about before my time. Because when you have a story of an individual who did things the hard way against all odds and had to take a hard path to get to a certain point, those are the stories you live to tell about. Now, I'm not saying nobody else had it as hard as Dick Tiger, because a lot of fighters have all time. Honestly, no one's saying that. But we think about what this guy had to go through in his own home country of Nigeria, being a part of the Nigerian military in the middle of a Nigerian civil war, then bolting to Liverpool to pursue his career at a later age and have the success he had. Tells you everything about what Dick Tiger was all about. Grit, determination, relentlessness, did it methodically, knew his time was going to come, just kept pursuing until he got to the top of the mountain 3 times over. May God rest the souls of both Jose Torres and Dick Tiger. Tremendous stories. Actually, 2 tremendous fights. And that'll wrap up this edition of Sirhan on X. Back to the regular programming tomorrow. As I said last night, an infamous night that took place overseas for an individual did something infamously, but maybe in hindsight, maybe the best thing he ever did. I'll touch on that tomorrow night. And as always, if you missed this show or any other shows of the past, you can catch them on the iHeartRadio, the Apple Podcast apps on your phones, especially for the iPhone users. And if you have watched one of the video version and want to see this thing as I'm talking, catch it on the Spotify video app. Also, iHeart supposedly having some merger with Netflix. I'll be looking into that. So you guys might be watching me on Netflix for all you care. I'll see what I can do. And as always, make self-care your number one priority in all walks of life. Always take care of yourself first. Respect other people's boundaries. Don't let anyone step on your boundaries, and all the good things will happen. If you don't take care of yourself first and don't respect boundaries and let people walk all over you, nothing else is going to matter. Always focus on you. Don't let anyone step on your boundaries. And on that note, have a good rest of the night. Take care of yourselves. God bless, and I will see you tomorrow night.